Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday.
A different topic. In the wake of the balloon operation, NSC and the administration has said that it's going to brief members of the Trump administration on that. Can you give us a list of which Trump administration members would be eligible for that briefing? I mean, is former President Trump eligible, since the president had previously blocked him from getting classified briefings after he left office?
So as we mentioned, and you heard my colleagues from NSC, that we are prepared, the intelligence community is indeed prepared to offer key officials, as you were just laying out, from the Trump administration on the briefings on this PRC surveillance program. And so we're not going to get into who are those key officials. From here, I would refer you to the intelligence community on those logistics, on when it's going to happen, and who those key officials would be. But again, we are prepared, we are willing to have that conversations, to do the briefing, but just not going to get into the specifics of who. Phil.
Thanks, Karine. The administration officials said that after the balloon was shot down, there were communications between the administration and their Chinese counterparts, kind of detailing maybe rationale on the why. Can you talk about how you guys are thinking through the next steps in this relationship, given the cancellation of Secretary Blinken's visit, and obviously it would seem to be a pretty brazen act over the course of the last week?
So look, our approach with China has been pretty clear, and we've been very clear about this, and it will continue to be calm, resolute, and practical. That is not going to change on how we're going to move forward with our relationship with China, with our diplomatic conversations as we move beyond this. The president has been clear. We have been and will continue to keep open lines of communications with China. As you mentioned, Blinken and Jake Sullivan and many others have continued those dialogues, especially after last week. In fact, like I was mentioned, there was multiple levels of conversation about their surveillance balloon, and again communicated directly with China after we took our action to bring the balloon down. So again, multiple channels of communication that will continue. China's, we believe, irresponsible action were visible for the American and the world to see. Not only that, at the same time, a second PRC surveillance balloon was seen traversing in Latin America. That's one thing that you all reported. And it's up to China to show it is serious about its words of being a responsible country, that it wants to build on the meeting that the president had with President Xi very recently. And so it's up to China to figure out what kind of relationship that they want. And as you know, yes, Secretary Blinken did postpone his trip. It was not canceled. And when the time permits, we'll see that trip back on the books. But again, it doesn't change our what we are trying to do and how we're trying to move with China. It's up to them.
And then, just one more. On Saturday, when the president spoke just off of Air Force One, he seemed very definitive in making clear that he was the one who said explicitly, "I want this to be shot down." Military leaders suggested wait. Was that a reflection, perhaps, in frustration in terms of the political attacks you guys have gotten from Republicans who said this should have happened on the front end as opposed to the back end?
Well, just a couple of things. I know there was a TikTok that went out to all of you from the National Security Council that was pretty detailed on how everything kind of broke down for the past week and how things flowed. I'll give a little truncated version of that. On Tuesday, the president, through the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, directed the military to refine and present options to shoot the balloon down immediately. The president also directed the military and the intelligence community to collect against the balloon so that we would learn more about China's capabilities and tradecraft. At the same time, we protected against Chinese intelligence collection because we knew exactly where the balloon was going. The military recommended taking the balloon down over water, following the determination by military commanders that there was undue risk of debris causing harm to civilians while the balloon was over land in Alaska, Canada, or the continental United States. On Wednesday, the president directed the military to take it down at the first available opportunity when it could be done with safety, especially as we're thinking about Americans' lives and being safe there, while maximizing our ability to recover the payload. shooting the balloon down over water wasn't just the safest option. It maximized the chance of recovering the payload, giving us a better chance to get information from the Chinese surveillance balloon payload. But I think the bottom line here, and this is something that we want to make very clear, is that, look, what China did was unacceptable. We protected civilians, and we gained more intel while protecting our own sensitive information. And so I laid that out so you have an understanding of how this past week went. And, you know, the president, as we all know, is not just the president, he's also the commander-in-chief, and his number one priority is making sure that American lives are protected and that we protect, citizens in this country. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we were able to collect some data, which we were able to do, and that's why we took that action. And the president made sure we took that action.
Thanks, Karine. How much damage would you say has been done to the U.S.-China relationship because of this? And do you expect the president to bring this topic up in his speech tomorrow night?
Look, I will say this, as we know, when it comes to State of the Union speech, foreign policy is always a topic in that speech. I'm not going to get ahead of the president and what he's going to speak to as it relates specifically to China. I just laid out at the top that it is going to be up to China. It's up to China to see how they want to see this relationship moving forward. And so I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Karine. Thanks. Is this the first Chinese balloon that the U.S. identified flying over U.S. airspace under this administration?
So what I can say is that we have talked about China's balloon program. We have generally on this, the Chinese surveillance balloons program has been around for some time. We even briefed Congress this past August. So I don't have any specific on any other balloon during this president's administration, but there has been a program that has been in effect. We have kept Congress abreast on that. But I don't have anything more to say or to share.
How is it possible that this administration discovered at least 3 previous balloons that flew over the U.S. under the previous administration, but Trump officials didn't know it was happening?
Yeah, so look, I think that, and we have talked about this before, about how when the PRC government surveillance balloons transited the continental U.S. briefly, at least 3 times, as you just mentioned, during the president's prior administration, and once that we know of the beginning of this administration's, but never for this duration of time, as we know. This information was discovered prior to the administration left, but the intelligence community, as I said, is prepared to give briefings to key officials. But this is something. Post. But this is something that they were not aware of, as we've just laid out. But again, we are ready to brief key officials to let them know what the intelligence community was able to figure out.
You can share about how you became aware of it. Like, did you? Is there? I just don't. Did you go back and look at some?
So I'm not going to get into intelligence community information from here. That's not something that we do from certainly from the briefing room. What I can say is that we learned of this, the 3 prior during the past administration, and so we are willing to share that information. But again, just not going to get into intelligence from here.
Last question on this: since the administration was aware of the balloon program, did any U.S. officials have conversations with the Chinese about balloons over U.S. airspace during this administration?
We're not going to get into specifics of private diplomatic conversations we have with China. We're just not going to do that from here. We've been very clear that what China did was indeed a violation of international law. You've heard directly from Secretary Blinken making that very clear. And China knows that that we will vigorously defend our homeland and sovereignty. That is something that we've also made very clear. But we're just not going to get into diplomatic conversations from here. Okay, the person behind you.
Thank you. So, Karine, we know of these few balloons that had flown in the past, the one, of course, from last week. You say the relationship is up to China going forward. Should the expectation be for the American public that this is it with balloons then? Or is it that this could potentially happen again in the future? And if that's the case, that the standard procedure going forward is wait for it to get over water and then it'll be shot down?
I'm not going to get into any specifics of what might happen next or hypotheticals from here. I'm just not going to do that. What I can say is, as you've heard me say, there was a China surveillance program, right, balloon program that we have that has been going on for some time, that Congress certainly was briefed on back in last August, but just not going to get into hypotheticals from here.
And then one more. There's bipartisan calls up on Capitol Hill as it relates to TikTok and the national security implications of it. You have Congressman Ken Buck saying, if you see this CCP surveillance balloon scares you, wait until you hear about TikTok. Senator Michael Bennet had recently called on the CEOs of Apple and Google to remove TikTok from their devices, from their Google Play stores and Apple Play Store. Does the administration believe that TikTok is a national security threat, and does it believe that those apps should be removed from phones?
So look, the president, the Biden administration, more broadly, has never allowed TikTok on the White House devices. Other federal agencies have similar restriction. We have been clear about our concerns on apps like TikTok. And so, look, we are focused on the challenges of certain countries, including China, seeking to leverage digital technologies and Americans' data in ways that present unacceptable national security risk. I'm just not going to get ahead of it. As we know, there's a review currently happening, but we take this very seriously. And as I said, the Biden administration has never allowed TikTok on the White House devices.
Is it a national security risk?
Again, I'm just not going to. There's a review happening by CFIUS. I'm just not going to get ahead of that.
Thanks, Karine.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
The way you continue to